Many thanks to Socialist Action for inviting the Workers' World Party election campaign to be a part of this very important and timely discussion. This is a very exciting period for revolutionaries around the world. So many activists and revolutionaries are not waiting for the outcome of these bourgeois elections to continue the struggle here and worldwide, be it shutting down racist Trump rallies, holding one-day strikes like in Chicago, or supporting the current heroic Verizon strike, or organizing upcoming May Day rallies from New York City to Durham, North Carolina to Los Angeles. These events are encouraging signs, acknowledging that young people especially see no future in capitalism. Now there's the Sanders phenomenon. Of course, we can't support Sanders because he's an imperialist, not a socialist. Sanders supports Israel's right to exist, though he has said something sympathetic to the Palestinians. He supported the bombing of Yugoslavia in the late 1990s. He has attacked the Cuban Socialist Revolution by attacking its leadership. The Washington Post just reported that Sanders supports sending troops to Syria and supports the kill list of drone hits. He is working to rejuvenate the Democratic Party, which, like the Republican Party, represents capitalism, instead of leading people away in the independent revolutionary direction. But the main question is, what does it tell us that millions of people, primarily young people, are supporting someone who says that they are a socialist and someone who agitates against Wall Street and the 1%? And as one of the previous speakers said, the Washington Post is an important political barometer in terms of people, especially young people, leaning towards socialism as opposed to capitalism. As a party, we view this Sanders phenomenon as a remarkable progressive step forward for this country, which has maintained its position as the #1 imperialist power based on a steady diet of virulent anti-communism to maintain class rule for decades. In terms of domestic policy, at best, Sanders models himself as a modern-day version of Franklin Roosevelt, whose administration passed the New Deal during the 1930s to save capitalism from the potential of a socialist revolution. Roosevelt had to convince the ruling class that the only way to stave off a revolution was to create social reforms, such as massive jobs program, along with a social safety net in the form of Social Security and unemployment benefits. The New Deal did not usher in socialism, but included capitalist reforms where some capitalist prosperity trickled down to the jobless and hungry masses who were becoming more and more desperate due to their dire living circumstances. Bernie Sanders seeks to carry out his own New Deal with similar social programs, like calling for free education in state colleges by regulating the profits of Wall Street and big business through taxation and other means. While his anti-Wall Street, pro-middle class rhetoric is striking a nerve with young people versus his pro-war, pro-Wall Street opponent, Hillary Clinton, his program falls way short of getting rid of the entire capitalist system, root and branch. The laws that govern capitalism can never go back to the days of FDR. And even though we are for reforms, if they help to relieve some of the tremendous pain and suffering for our class, the reality is that any reforms are temporary bandages for the much larger scourge of capitalism. Individual capitalists are driven to make and save profits by the system, and no amount of legal regulations that Sanders is projecting will eradicate widespread inherent corruption and massive wage theft. In our opinion, the acid test for any leftist, especially in this country,
regardless of nationalities, is to understand the significance of the national question upon which white supremacist views thrive. This understanding is a major pillar of our election campaign. The difficulty Sanders has had in winning black people over is a good lesson for the left. We know he's been talking about racism and the criminal justice system, but initially he played down the police war against people of color. In fact, some Black Lives Matter forces disrupted some of his earliest rallies because he refused to talk about Black Lives Matter. A few months ago, he even came out against reparations for black people, calling the demand, quote, divisive. Our party says that this is not divisive, but showing support for reparations is showing class solidarity for demand for long denied justice for the descendants of former slaves. And doing this can be, showing this solidarity can be decisive. It is one political expression of the right to self-determination for oppressed peoples. Just last week, the New York Times printed a horrific expose on Jesuit priest who sold over 270 slaves to a Maryland plantation in the late 1700s to pay off the debt of the prestigious Georgetown University. The school did erase the names of these priests off some of the buildings, and now the issue of reparations has been raised by the descendants of these slaves, which the accrued interest amounts in the trillions of dollars for a slave economy that benefited both the North and the South. The lesson is, sisters and brothers, is that you cannot be a leader of a left-wing development without making what we Marxists call the national question, or the struggle against racism, national oppression, and white supremacy. You have to make it central to your program if you want to be taken seriously. With so much stake, with the US being the most powerful imperialist country and the ruling class's obsession to keep a large multinational working class divided and subjugated, the struggle against national oppression and white supremacy is the central question to the class struggle in the United States. Sanders' first instinct was to marginalize the issue of racism. This is a mistake many on the left make, and they are weaker for it, and our movement is weaker for it. And this is why the struggle against white supremacy is central to Workers' World Party's election campaign, to our party's history. As you can see, and I hope you get a chance to get some of our literature, we have a 10-point program and other literature in the back table over there. Of course, there are dangers for our class. The Trump campaign, which is based on racism and a neo-fascistic appeal to angry white workers, is a serious danger. It is so great that young militants, including immigrant rights activists, Black Lives Matter activists, and anti-racist whites are disrupting Trump events and shutting them down, and many of them are carrying Bernie Sanders signs. That's a great development. And they are showing us all how you fight a racist threat. You don't stop racism by voting for the Democrats. You do it by shutting down racism by any means necessary to show that white supremacy has no right to free speech. Also, Ted Cruz is no better than Trump, as some activists in the Bronx recently disrupted him. Black Lives Matter is a working class struggle. Why? Because the intensification of racist police killings and mass incarceration is in large part a consequence of the global capitalist economic crisis. High-tech, globalized capital has no jobs and therefore no use for young black people to become productive in society. So the attitude of the corporate bosses and their state apparatus is to either put these youth in jail or kill them at the rate of 28 seconds a day in this country. This is why we say stop the genocidal war against black youth along with brown and indigenous youth. The fact that there's both an awakening on the left and on the right shouldn't surprise us. It is a response to the unprecedented global capitalist crisis that promises to get worse. It creates dangers, but also clearly it creates opportunities for growth for the revolutionary movement. And I think that those of us who consider ourselves revolutionary, anti-imperialist socialists, we better pay attention to these developments. They should be a warning, a good warning to us that it's time to work hard to strengthen the revolutionary anti-imperialist section of the left. And I think this will become all the more necessary after the Democratic Party establishment prevails over Sanders by giving the nomination to Clinton and then tries to absorb him. A lot of Sanders supporters are going to be furious once this happens. And it's up to us as the class-conscious left to have a strategy for winning over the best of those, the most militant of those who were backing Sanders over to a genuine revolutionary socialist orientation. We need to put away past differences and come together and work together to plan the strategy that will make such a thing possible. It is so important that the true socialist revolutionary struggle for a new level of unity, free of sectarianism, free of small-minded behavior, so that we can prepare for the revolutionary period that we are entering. We have more in common than we think. So let's continue to have this important strategic dialogue. Our movement very much needs it, because, sisters and brothers, our class very much needs it. Long live international solidarity.